Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catalina, and I'm an entrepreneur with a background in data science, operations, and process improvement. So I work on a couple of different things. I do data science consulting through my company, Exteractions. And lastly, I am also launching the first data science bootcamp here in Miami, Data.Miami. So not only are we educating and connecting the future data scientists here in Miami, but we're also trying to bring together all of the pieces of the data science ecosystem. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about building a data science culture and how that plays out in large organizations as well as small organizations, but as you know, in larger organizations, it can be even more difficult to create change. And I don't have the utensils on here because it's almost lunchtime. They're actually on there as a reminder of a quote by Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So when you're thinking about implementing a data science strategy or a data strategy in your organization, if you don't have the pieces to really enable and foster a data science culture, your data strategy will fail. So it's really important to keep that in mind, and I think this quote by Johan Himberg, who's a data scientist at Reactor, really sums it up. He says, "It's not enough to introduce big data technology, fancy algorithms, and some unicorn-like isolated data scientists to any organization and work culture and expect them to be able to change things on their own." So in order to get the most out of data science, the culture has to change to support the data-driven work. And this is really true. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to build and ensure that you're building the right data science culture. So we're going to use a framework that's very common, if you may be familiar with it, in operations or Six Sigma process improvement, and it's the 3 Ps: people, process, and product. And if you think about building your company's data science culture and think of these 3 elements and making sure that the pieces in these 3 elements are working correctly, then you'll be in a really good place to create that positive data science culture. So it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time and hard work to build that data science culture, but it's definitely worth it, at least I think so. And why is it worth it? Well, you're just going to have a more productive company overall if you do a good job of building a data science strategy and a data science culture. So, a lot of studies have shown this, but a study by Bain and Company said that companies that best use analytics are 5 times more likely to make decisions faster than those that don't, and also twice as likely to have a top quartile financial performance. So, if you do it correctly, you are going to reap the benefits. And also, timing matters on this. So it's not like at any point in time you can just say, okay, today we're going to start our data strategy, we're going to change our culture, and this can be as far advanced in the future as you want. Timing really does matter, and those who are adopting the data science culture now and who are the leaders are going to see the greatest return on investment. And that gap between the leaders and the laggards will only continue to widen as the companies that have the data science culture are able to correctly implement these technologies and really embrace the new technologies. They're going to keep on having a greater return on investment, and they're going to keep advancing. And those that stay behind will find it harder and harder to catch up. So regardless of whatever insights you gain from implementing some data science projects, if you don't have the entire company really dedicated to the data science culture and really embracing the changes, then those insights won't be implemented. You're not going to reap the full benefits. And so just to break down our very simple 3 Ps process a little bit further, we're going to dig deeper into each of these areas. So in the people area, we're going to talk a little bit about the leadership and the team. So for leadership, a lot of companies find it extremely useful and even necessary to have someone who's either on the C-suite or very close to it, who has had success in the past with data science and really believes in data science and all the technologies and the benefits that they can bring. to serve as an evangelist or a sponsor. So this person's going to be a champion of data science. They're going to be able to communicate effectively to the leaders in the organization, to anyone who is in a management position and is going to be able to affect a change. So they're going to be your go-to person, from both if you're a data scientist, but also if you're having trouble and think that maybe a data science project would help you on your team, they're your evangelist. But it's not enough to just have, one sponsor or one evangelist. You also need to give anyone who's in a management position some training in data science and, maybe some hands-on coding training, just so that they can get a really realistic sense of what they can expect when they're trying to roll out a data science project or working with a data science team. And if you don't do that, then you kind of run into this issue where a lot of the leaders are going off of the hype. They may get really excited and they really want to go through with a new project, but they don't have any idea of what it actually takes, what are the technical requirements that are needed, and so there's not a trust between the employee and the leader. And so that can be a big challenge, and it's really important, I'm going to keep going back to this point, that you build the trust in the data science process and in the results and the outcomes so that people can really embrace it. Okay, so let's say you've trained your leaders, you have your evangelists. Well, you also obviously need people who are going to be kind of the on-the-ground data science team. So, many people have heard of the unicorn data scientists, and some people think that they're going to kickstart their data science initiatives and their data science team by, having a job listing that includes a PhD in computer science, but also a PhD in statistics, experience with R, Python, Hadoop, everything, right? And so it may sound like a great idea, but it really doesn't make business sense. First of all, it's going to be very difficult to find that person, right? And second of all, you're really going to need more than that person on your team or working in a data science project. We just heard data science is a team sport. It definitely is, right? So who can we have on our data science team? Well, we definitely want them to be interdisciplinary, coming from different backgrounds, but having experience working with data. Of course, analytical, right? Of course. But they also have to have a characteristic that's very important, and it's that curiosity. So data scientists are always asking why. They seek the truth, and they want to make sure that the data that they're working with is accurate so that they can have accurate results. And this is really important. And then to some extent, of course, you have to have technical people on the team as well. You can't really build a data science team without anyone who's technical, and even those that may come from an analytical background will need kind of more technical skills. So maybe you have a business analyst who's an R or Python user. They're probably a great candidate. Maybe you have a database administrator who has understanding of information systems and they're very analytical and curious. That's also a really great candidate. So how do you get these people to be ready to work on a data science team? Well, a lot of times it's lateral moves. They may require some additional training, similar to internal promotions. They'll require some training as well. And of course, I'm not excluding external hires. So it's great to be able to grab a data scientist who's already working at another company that is doing great work, and hiring people who just graduated with degrees in computer science, statistics, masters in business analytics. All of these people will really help to build your data science team. So for process, we're going to talk a little bit about the organization structure and the business needs. The process, the data science process will rarely change. I think we saw this earlier too, and you'll see some variations of it, but generally it looks like this. The first step, understanding the problem, understanding the business needs, then kind of acquiring the data, collecting it, cleaning, all the stuff that comes with the data, which is a large chunk of the process. Then you can go into modeling, communicating, and finally, deployment, whether that's some type of dashboard or maybe it's a data product that goes out to users. But even though the process looks linear, of course it's not. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of iteration, and you're not just going to have one person or two people just working through this process. You have a ton of different hands in the pot. So you really have to think about, in your organization, how is this actually going to be executed, right? Because you're going to have different teams collaborating at different stages of the process. And so you have to think about, from a tactical but more organizational level, how is this actually going to play out? And so there are so many details that we can go into for organizational structure, and this is a data science conference and not one on kind of organizational structure and organizational behavior. So we're going to just look at the org structure from the perspective of the data science function. So there are kind of three ways that you can organize your data science function. The first one is the standalone data science team. So this is a centralized team with a manager and a team of data scientists, or a group of business analysts, data scientists who work under that leader. And this is great because it gives the team a lot of autonomy, and they can work on a lot of really cool projects. But the risk here is that there's not enough collaboration with different functional departments. And so many times the data science team works on some really cool projects, and then they don't never get really implemented, or maybe they didn't have clear direction at the beginning, and they weren't clear on what was actually needed. And so sometimes, this can be frustrating, and it can lead to, like I said, a lack of trust in that data science process and the outcome. The second way that you can organize the data science function is to have embedded data scientists on different functional departments. So this is where you have maybe one or two data scientists, depending on how big that department is. And this is great because it lends itself to a lot of collaboration between the domain experts and the leaders, the functional leaders. But at the same time, you run the risk of reduced autonomy from the data science function. So they may not have the opportunity to collaborate as much together and work on really cool, innovative projects that they want, and maybe just they're supporting kind of the functional heads. And then if you are lucky enough to need and have a really big data science team, then maybe you can have a hybrid approach where you do have more of a centralized data science function, but within that function you have people who specialize in maybe pricing or marketing or operations, and they can work together on some projects or take on initiatives on their own. But this may not work for everyone. But really, regardless of how you organize your data science function, it's really important to have cross-functional collaboration at every step of the way. Especially at the beginning, in the understanding stage of the process, you need to have really clear goals and guidelines on what is the expected outcome of this project, and what's going to be a successful project and what's going to be unsuccessful. And then also when you need kind of domain knowledge for the validation, right? So we talked a little bit about how you can have a data science team, but if they don't have the domain expertise, the subject matter expertise, then there's a lack of insights on what that data means. And then we have to also think about the business needs. So not every company implements a data science team or a data science function for the same purposes. There are two kind of areas that you can think about, but if you have different business needs, you're gonna have different data science deliverables. So the first area is using data science to gather the business insights and to make better decisions. So we saw a little bit of that, when we saw the presentation from Brian from the Florida Panthers. How can we best adjust our pricing to maximize our revenue? Shout out for you, Brian. But a lot of times this is going to require a really different interaction between teams than something where your data science team is helping develop a data product. So a data product, we also just talked about, that can be anything that, like a search or a ranker or some type of algorithm that can then be deployed at scale, whether that's internal or external. But on this end, with the data product, you're going to have a lot more collaboration with engineering because you're probably going to have to prototype and test and iterate, and you're going to have constant deployments. Whereas in the other one, it's kind of a lot more interaction with the subject matter expertise. It's going to require stronger communication and visualization skills. And so when thinking about the process and how the data science process is going to play out in your organization, you have to think about both your organizational structure and how that's defined and your business needs, and then set some guidelines for this process. If you don't set some guidelines and you just expect the data science team to kind of figure it out, well, at some point, someone's going to drop the ball. They're really not clear on, at what point do I have to check in, and there's going to be a lack of trust, right? The project may not go as smoothly as you would like it to, and then you're not going to have that positive feedback loop, which is so necessary to build the trust and the data science culture. Okay, and then the last area where it's really, really important, but a lot of people think about this often and they fail to think about the other areas, but we really have to think about the product. So for this presentation, I kind of broke up product into the tools and the data. So obviously, tools is kind of top of mind when anyone is thinking about building out the data science function in their organization. But data scientists need the right tools in order to be productive at every stage of the process. So both for access, for analysis, for dissemination of information, for deployment. So at all of these steps, you need the right tools, and they need to also allow collaboration between your data scientists and also between the data scientists and other subject matter expertise or functional heads. So by no means are these tools exhaustive, but I think open source tools are really great, and we heard from some other products.
What's the fourth one?
This one, the Docker. So I'm going to go over them. Yeah. So the first one, Hadoop, right? So this is for big data. I mean, maybe you don't have Hadoop in your organization. Maybe you don't need Hadoop, but I just put some examples of some of the tools that are very popular. R and Python are very popular programming languages. It's very easy to find people that are working with these programming languages nowadays that are trying to get into the field. They're the most common. Docker is a tool which is used to containerize your applications. So it's really great for deployment because a lot of times if you have a model or some type of algorithm or some type of analysis and you move it to a different environment, a different computer, a different machine, it doesn't work because you don't have the right environment set up. So this allows you to just kind of put it all in a container and then ship that. So that makes it very easy to collaborate. Anaconda is also a tool which it's different from Docker, but it's used in a similar way where you kind of set up the environment on your machine and you can share that environment so that other people can also run the application or whatever script you've developed without having any trouble. And then Git, it's becoming more and more popular in the data science space. It's always been kind of a favorite for developers, software developers, for version control. So that's also a great tool that you can use if you have several people working on the same code, working on improving an algorithm, or when you're building out a prototype for a data product and you're constantly changing it. It allows you to keep track of all the different versions and not have a mess kind of when you're working with these things. Okay, so this is about data, right? So if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. This is really kind of the mantra that you need to have in an organization that is going to embrace a data science culture. You have to think about, measuring pretty much everything. I mean, you have to be strategic about it, but nowadays it's much cheaper to store. So, if you're unsure, I would just say, yeah, just collect that data. We can kind of, check it out later, and if we don't need it, we'll start collecting something different. But if you can't measure it, then you won't be able to go back, review, analyze, make changes. And this goes for both like consumer data, but also things internally. A lot of people think that, data science is gonna really help to drive revenue and, improve their relationships with the consumers, and that's definitely true. But there are definitely ways that you can use data science for your company internally to understand and measure different things that are happening in your organization as well. And I think it's really important to also attract data science talent, to really make sure that you have this type of mentality in your organization, because people who are really passionate about data science and really want to add value to an organization will sense and know that it'll be difficult if you don't have this type of culture and this type of mentality. So for data science to be possible and the outputs to be meaningful, well, your data needs to be quality data. So there was a study that came out in the Harvard Business Review that said that only 3% of companies met basic data quality standards. So that's pretty low. I'm sure, a lot of companies are doing better than that, but it's a big problem, and you really do need to invest in data governance. But if you're working with data that's really incomplete, then it's going to be difficult to build out, machine learning algorithms that are accurate and that produce meaningful results. Your data also needs to be consistent. So it can't, in one field or in one table, suggest something and then suggest something different somewhere else. And even if your data is consistent, if it's not accurate, if it doesn't reflect the reality, then bad data in, bad outcomes, doesn't matter what the model says. And a lot of times I see this, and I hear about this happening where the data scientists are super excited because they got some really great results, and then they show it to the functional head or the domain expert, and they're just like, this just doesn't make sense, like there's something wrong here, and then kind of go back and realize like our data is not right. So it's really important to invest in this. And the last point, and these are not exhaustive. You can kind of do some research on what defines good quality data. There are a lot of ways and a lot of different characteristics of it, but granularity is really important too. So it's going to be much easier for you to aggregate data than to deaggregate it, right? If it's already stored at a level where it's stored on like weekly sales, but you really wanted to see daily sales, I mean, you're going to have trouble there, right? So these things are really important, and it's important to invest in this up front, and to think about all of these different areas when you're designing a data strategy, when you're thinking about implementing data science projects. And this is kind of just a summary of what we touched on. So I wanted to keep the framework pretty simple, but just provide you with some guidelines in all of these areas to ensure that you're building a data science culture that's positive and you're nurturing this at every step of the way. So always keep in mind people, process, and product. And if you are ensuring that your data strategy has these key elements, then you'll be on your way to building a good data science culture.